Well, this week's been a bit challenging for me. Had a lot of things to catch up on quickly before we get to the financial year end, and another thing we had to get through and deal with. And in the midst of it all, I had a rare moment where I was able to go back to a house that I had energy balanced some 5 years ago. At that stage, the house was undergoing really significant major renovations, and there was even a chance, being an old return veranda bungalow in Unley, very close to our mission, that it might even fall down if it wasn't rescued. And going into the house for a second time, it was interesting to see how the earlier balancing was still more or less intact. I'd realised there was going to be a lot of work done on the block, so I had intentionally tried to place my crystals and copper nails in positions which would allow them not to be disturbed during the work. But of course you can't be perfect, and they were disturbed. And on top of that, for some reason or another, the man who'd been present before I tidied things up had returned, being a long-term resident of the property, and was causing a few issues for the person, and I had to recheck a few of the points. But it's fascinating to go in and sense, when you've done it, almost no energy. Even though there are lines, natural energy lines, by placing crystals in some particular places, you can actually dumb them down for a period of their travel, which means that the house is almost over calm in terms of the energy. I thought, it's energy. Always we come back to energy. We are energy. We are entirely energy. Atoms are energy. Everything is energetic, just vibrates at different rates. Spirit vibrates at a very high rate because it's freed of the physical body, which vibrates much more slowly. Even brick walls vibrate. Sometimes I can get people to draw in the power. If you don't think of the brick wall as a brick and you sense it as an energy, you'll find that the brick wall you're connecting with no longer seems as it was. It just seems a dense energy you're contacting, and that you can actually reach through and find you can sense the energy at the other side of the wall. One of the earliest forms of drawing down the power often did that, got you to extend your awareness beyond the room, just to sense the energetic plan of everything around you. Energy, of course, is what we work with when we're working psychically. If we're working psychically, we look at the energy of the person. So to draw the power in and open up our awareness without maybe even connecting to spirit will allow us to become much more aware of the individual's issues, their health issue, their physical issues. You can also, if you really tune in properly before you start, you can almost tell them the question they intend to ask you, if you're doing it really well. And you can decide whether you really should answer that question, because that's a whole different matter, and that transaction's all a different matter. So energy and spirit, when we're trying to connect, we draw down the power to raise our vibrations. Before the power became the vogue, in the early 2000s, people used to set their intent. Liz would go and stand outside of the mission, quietly, out of sight, setting her intent, making contact with spirit mentally, with her guides mentally, being ready to work, making sure she wasn't disturbed by anybody. It was the good old days when we had a number of people who would be chairing. So when you were working, you didn't chair. It's very tough to chair and work, because you're having to continue this relationship with people as they're arriving, to greet them and to set the place up, and although often with the help of others to get the place ready to work, it actually affects you if you are having to remain in that physical vibration rather than free yourself in that mental vibration. So energy of your spirit, much higher than ours. The power the work outside, all about raising our vibrations to meet spirit. But we also have to understand, I was talking about a house earlier, we leave our vibrations in the house, whether we like it or not. Often it's fairly neutral. We live in a house, we love the house, we move on, we feel sad. Sometimes we may pass away in the house and feel drawn to it because it was important to us. And people do come back to look at their houses. The first spirit I ever saw as a 9-year-old, as I've told people before, a pouring wet, rainy night in late November in England, coming back from primary school, dropped off at the gate by the taxi, no one at home, running up the drive in the howling gale and the rain, finding the key from under the flower pot, opening the door, rushing up, pressing the gas button, the button which set an electric spark to the gas light, and realising somebody was coming down the stairs and racing up the stairs through the person and hiding under the bed covers. Interesting, my parents just said, well, yes, it's just the man coming to visit his house. It was like his baby. He comes every so often to make sure it's all right. We just ask him not to bother us very much. Don't worry, he won't hurt you, but don't bother to tell anybody you saw him. Some people don't like hearing that. They might think it's strange. He said, but more people see these things than they ever admit to. So I just let it go. I let it go from 9 years to 36 years old when I met Liz and got drawn into the world of spirit. Actually 34, I'll tell a lie. So 37 years ago this year. That sensing energy, interestingly, in the same place there was a different energy. A little way down the road from our house we used to deliberately go to what had been an old boating lake. And the boating lake had been drained during the Second World War and never reopened afterwards. It was a beauty spot. The trains used to stop on a railway bridge and people would make their way walking a mile down to this lake before the war. After the war it was a forgotten place. And you'd go there and you'd get to what was the old ticket office, and just outside was the most horrendous energy I've ever felt that terrified you. It was a remnant energy, it wasn't spirit. It's a remnant energy of something that happened. We all had ideas of what would happen, but anybody I took there, from adults to other children, would be terrified by it. It used to be a kind of marker to go there. Energy being left imprinted. Energy is left imprinted in other ways. It's left imprinted on the Pilgrim's Way. If you went to Santiago del Compostela and you actually dowsed across the Pilgrim's line, you would find a line of energy from the pilgrims walking to the Abbey and leaving the thoughts of their religion, their belief, leaving their energy, a positive energy, as they walk to visit this place. The old Canterbury Way, you might have heard of it in the Canterbury Tales by Chaucer if you had the misfortune to study it at school. That showed energy. There's energy in places that the Aboriginals held sacred here. Interestingly, if you find one of them, you get a spiral of energy. You get straight lines between places like Glastonbury and Salisbury Cathedral. Ley lines formed by the power of love and energy calling to each other. When Fountain formed its group here to get the energy spreading out from Victoria Square, they also did some exercises with the statue of Colonel Light on Montefiore Hill, and you will find there's a line of energy that goes from that to the Victoria Fountain. You'll find from our creating the beacons of light, you can douse a trace of energy to all the other beacons that are connected. They're still there. To Elizabeth Spiritualist Church, St John's, down to Old Noarlunga, out to Port Lincoln, where some people from Fountain did it, and other people joined in from other places. And you can track those positive lines of energy, all linked together, creating a grid above Adelaide. So energy is important to all of us. It's vital for our work, but it's also important to understand it. Bending spoons is your own natural energy. spirit doesn't come into it. We have our own natural psychic abilities, natural abilities that we have, where we can focus our energy to bend spoons. It doesn't involve others. When we're moving the tables round, we have to check whether it is just us, telekinetic energy created by our energetic grouping of people around the table that causes it to lift and move. Levitation can be done by people who have no contact with spirit, but they have a focus on being able to do it. There are a number of people called magicians who actually learnt how to control that. It's not spirit lifting them in the air, it's just themselves. Spirit probably wouldn't lift people much in the air because it doesn't prove anything, really. It doesn't prove who it is, it doesn't prove they exist. The only way they can really communicate to us is when they actually make the effort of trying to communicate in a form which can be converted to word, to what we see and hear, which proves who they are. It's one of the problems guides have. There is no relationship to us, and no relationship, normally not a relationship to us. Some people may find their loved ones are there, but invariably it's a guide with more time in the spirit world who's developed more abilities who will be helping you, and they don't often prove who they are, so we just have to try and test them in our own ways. Energy again, because it's us and the energy that forms. When we pass away, our lighter vibrations allow us to move into the spirit world. So think about it as you look around the world now. Think about looking out and seeing things as an energetic form and sending energy to people to uplift them. You'll see people looking sad. Darkness doesn't mean evil spirits. Darkness means they're sad. Learn to reflect the colours of the vibrations to tell you how a person is feeling. Darkness may be somebody who's not very nice, but it's more likely, in the majority of cases, that it will be somebody who's depressed. Something's happened to them. You can tell. You look at somebody, you form a sense of the colour around them, and psychically you can work. So energy is one of our first port of calls, and this trip back to that house was fascinating because I found that what I'd done 5 years ago was still there. And of course there is a linkage. I did that house some years ago. Last year, during the filming of The Hunting, the SBS movie about the misuse of children taking photographs and the problems it created, we actually helped the cast find somewhere to park, and it helped us because we got some money which we'll be using eventually to repair the car park. But that film was filmed in that house I cleaned the energy in. The Hunting was filmed just round the corner from us, and then now, a year on, I'm called back because they wanted me just to make sure that those energies were still in balance. So it's an interesting time, isn't it?